Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and welcome to This Week in Mythic Plus. This week's affixes are Tyrannical, Volcanic, Raging, and the new seasonal affix, which is Tormented. So, I'm going to break this video down into a couple of different parts than it usually will be. I first want to talk about what reasons there are to do Mythic Plus this week, because I think that there's a lot of people curious about what exactly they can get out of doing keys this week versus next week, and so I think that would be good to talk about. Then I'm also going to do a little bit of an explanation about just how Tormented works in general and the most important things to know about it, and then we'll go dungeon by dungeon. So this will be a little bit longer than a usual This Week in Mythic Plus video, but I'll keep it as concise as I can. And this release schedule of a couple days after the reset is going to be the new normal until we know what the affixes are in advance again. So, what reasons are there to do Mythic Plus this week? Well, you can get 229 gear from the end of a dungeon, which, not bad. You get Valor points, although the cap is fairly low. You'll run into it after a few dungeons. You can get Mythic Plus score, which is pretty useful. So Mythic Plus score gets you towards the new Keystone Master achievements, and if you want to upgrade the gear you get from Mythic Plus all the way up to 246, you're going to need 2,000 Mythic Plus score. 2,000 Mythic Plus score means 15s in each dungeon on both Tyrannical and Fortified weeks, with a little bit of wiggle room. You know, if you can do higher than that, then you get a little bit of flexibility to have some dungeons that are lower than that as well. And so that is something that you may wish to make progress towards this week. For instance, if you would like to upgrade something to 246 next week, then you'd want to make sure you get every dungeon done this week, so that you can get the score from all of them from Tyrannical week, because obviously that won't be available next week. Next week will be Fortified. So that's one other thing going on this week. And then the final thing is the Great Vault. Great Vault is 252 loot if you can do a 15 or higher. And filling out all 4 of these slots is a good idea. There's a good chance that you will select something from the Heroic row if you're getting Heroic Raid gear options as well, because of the way the Domination sockets work and everything, but it's still a good thing to do. You might not get good options from Raid, you might not get Domination slots from Raid. There are trinkets that are good from Mythic Plus that you might see from Mythic Plus. So if you can do 15 style keys, that is a reason to do it, even though it doesn't drop any better loot at the end of the dungeon than a plus 10 would this week. But basically, the highest key you can do has some good reason to go do it this week. So that's why one might want to do Mythic Plus this week. What is the texture of this week? Actually pretty favorable. The other affixes here, Volcanic, Raging, pretty good. Pretty low impact in most dungeons. And then the new affix, Tormented, is an interesting one. So Tormented puts 4 mini-bosses scattered throughout the dungeon. If you have Mythic Dungeon tools, it will mark them with the aura icon that they each have. So they each have an aura that, for instance, Auro's Cold Heart has 50% move speed reduction. If you don't kill the mini-boss, the last boss of the dungeon will have that aura, so that's one reason to kill them. And they also drop anima powers when they're dead. Each roll will see a choice of 3 anima powers, which you can also see on MDT. If you right-click on the mini-boss, you can see the available anima powers. So tanks, for instance, get offered the Handbook of Uncivil Etiquette, 10% increased damage to targets you successfully interrupt for 8 seconds, 10% reduced AoE damage for you and all allies within 10 yards, or upon entering combat, gain 70% movement speed for 6 seconds. That'll be your choices from this mini-boss every single time you kill it this season if you're a tank player. Now, my initial impression of a lot of these anima powers is a lot of them are kind of medium, not too impactful. This pick, for instance, pretty whatever. There are some dungeons where, you know, maybe this will make a big deal, be worth taking, but the numbers are fairly small on a lot of these things. One power that I think is really good, the Volcanic Plume one, even though it doesn't do a huge amount of damage, will get you a lot of free interrupts on packs, so I think that one's a really good one to pick up if you're a DPS player. And other than that, just, you know, take like the Champions brand one that gives you stats. And yeah, I'll have more advice about specific powers for specific roles and specific dungeons as I get some more experience with the affix, but for now, just try them all out. Other than that, the mini-bosses are mostly pretty straightforward. They're, you know, what to do against them is kind of obvious. The main things I would say, make sure you have your interrupts ready for Incinerator Arcolith. This Inferno cast really needs to get kicked, and it will cast more frequently than one person can interrupt it, so make sure that you're doing that intelligently. And the... where's the other one on the other side? This one. The Executioner. The way that the fear works is that if you aren't standing on top of another player, so within 6 yards of another player, it'll fear you. So stack up for that one, or else you will be you'll be getting feared. So the challenge here though is that you want to spread after, because you don't want to get hit by Carnage. So spread and then stack. I don't know, kind of fun. Yeah, that's the main thing I've noticed, kind of just in general stuff. Okay, specific things that are going on. Dungeon by dungeon, I would say the main thing this week is that it's not prideful anymore. You don't need to do any 20%, 40% thresholds that you had to do last season. So I think that the default strategies for some dungeons are going to change. The kind of default way that I would approach this affix is, let's get all 4 of our anima powers early in the dungeon. So for In the Other Side, for instance, you've got 2 mini-bosses in the ring, you've got 1 just at the start of the Mechagon wing, and you've got 1 a little ways into the Ardenweald wing. So my first guess at how to go about this is to head around the ring in a circle, stop by the Mechagon ring, and... ignore my stupid guilty. Stop by the Mechagon wing, pick up this anima power, do a U-turn, and go and grab your final anima power here before you've even pulled any bosses, right? I think that is a good default strategy for this dungeon. It means you'll have all 4 anima powers for every single boss. That's not possible in some of the more linear dungeons. So in Mist, for instance, you get 2 anima powers before you fight the first boss, but there's no way to get access to this 3rd or 4th one, short of shenanigans of pulling this thing over the wall, which I've seen people do, but I don't know exactly how to replicate yet. And then, yeah, so that makes dungeons like this, where there's a hard first boss, into really, really tricky ones. Mists is a dungeon where the first boss, for instance, if you can get through that, you can get through the whole rest of the dungeon, but like without Prideful, this is going to feel really, really tough. Halls of Atonement, also, you only get 2 mini-bosses here, and then you don't get the other 2 until you get into this area. Plaguefall, you're going to be fighting the first boss with just the 1 mini-boss. It's possible that at some point there will be like a high-level strategy involving, grabbing this one first, but the thing is, these are, I think, some of the weaker powers, so I don't think it'll really be worth doing that. I don't think it's worth to go super far out of your way to grab powers if it involves doing a lot of backtracking. I think it's only worth in a case where it's like, you're not really going that far out of your way, right? Like, I'd hop into the Mechagon wing and grab this power because I have to kill 1 extra enemy to do that, right? But I'm not going to go and just, clear an extra wing and then backtrack and then, re-backtrack again. So that's my default for how I think these should work. All of these routes, by the way, are available on Raider.io. There'll be a link in the description below. You can go grab them and see what you think. Let me know what you think of them. Let me know how they work. I've tested out several of these, and these are my current best ideas in these dungeons, but, in a couple weeks, I'm sure that a lot of these things are going to look pretty silly, so let me know. Let me know in ways that you found these to go wrong. Very interested in those. Sanguine Depths, another dungeon where you're not going to get too much power for the hardest bosses, right? First boss, you're only going to have 1 power. Second boss, you're going to have 3 at least, 4. One thing to note about the way Tormented works is that the mini-bosses do not social aggro. So if you tag Incinerator Arcolith here, it will run towards you, whether you're over here, or I'd prefer fighting it actually out over here if you can. Sneak through first and then tag it. It won't aggro these things as it walks next to them. As long as you haven't hit it with some kind of AoE spreading thing, it will just run to you, and it won't aggro the friends that are near it. So that's a really useful tip to be aware of in all the dungeons, but especially in Sanguine Depths, because they keep placing them near other mobs, and so you shouldn't fight these with other enemies generally, unless you really know what's going on. I would advise everybody this week, just chill, fight them by themselves. It's a recipe for disaster to fight them with other things. In a lot of cases, it's not so much the abilities that'll get you. The problem is fighting a regular pack with the auras that these things have, right? Like, fighting all the abilities of these at the same time, not too much the end of the world, but the fact that you are fighting, this pack with healing received reduced by 50% would make that really hard. So I would recommend, yeah, caution, fight these things one at a time until you really are comfortable with how they work. Spires has changed, so they've really backloaded the anima powers in this dungeon. You get one before the first boss, one before the second boss, and then the last two are both in this lead up to the last, or to the third boss. This one is in a kind of annoying spot here, but I still don't want to pull any of these packs. So the way that I've been doing this week is hopping through here like normal. You can just, mind suit this guy and hop up onto the wall, or shroud if you need to, or somebody can sneak through. Anybody with stealth can sneak through and then hop on a 2-seater mount and ferry everybody up. A lot of different ways to get past here. Warlock Gateway, whatever you want. Almost every group should have a way to get past this bit. And then you kind of hang out over in this free area, and the tank pulls this thing. But you have to be careful, because this mob hooks the tank in pretty quick into its cast sequence. So really make sure that it's immediately running out this way, and that you're not going to get gripped into a spot where you get in combat with these things. I was able to do it, but I could see how I was only like a few yards away from pulling stuff. So that might be something that causes a challenge for you. If that's something that a lot of groups are wiping to, maybe I'll adjust this route to pull this pack instead, but I'd rather not do that, if possible. Necrotic Wake, no anima powers for the first boss. The way I'm doing it is just kind of a similar path to the old season strategies. It might end up being worth it to go and grab this power first, but I'm not convinced yet, so that's something that I'm still going to be researching. Other than that, you get your next two before the next boss, and then there's one hanging out up here. I haven't actually done this dungeon yet, but I assume you can hit it with the Fleshcrafter throw cleavers, so maybe try and set that up if you're feeling brave. Remember, this guy does grip everybody in, though, so that could cause a problem if you're not careful with it, so buyer beware on that strategy. This route, like most of my routes, does use a skip. Most of the routes I've made this week have one skip in them. A few have 0. It says in the note at the start whether they do, and it explains it, that you can use Shroud or Indus pots. Most of them are pretty simple. Here, there's really not too much that you need to know to make this work. If you would rather do a route with absolutely no skips, just walk through the dungeon in a straight line, I'm not going to be producing multiple routes for these dungeons, at least for the next couple weeks. But I may end up splitting again into a no skips and a skips path, if there's demand for that. And then finally, Theater of Pain. So this is the one where my route deviates the most from, I would say, a Season 1 strategy. The way that the anima powers in here work, there's one when you drop down after the first boss, and then there's one in each wing of the dungeon. I would say, so what I found to be the best is to go and grab this one from Zav's wing, because it's right at the front of the wing, and then do a U-turn. I'm going to then go and clear Kultharok wing, then go and clear Gorechop wing. That gets you your 4th anima power, and then you can come back and take care of Zav with all 4 anima powers, which I think is pretty helpful against a pretty tricky boss. Again, this one I've found to be somewhat troubling. Aura's Coldheart here near the gas bag patrol. If you're really worried about this, you can pull the gas bag first, but I'd prefer not to fight this guy. So just have somebody tag this and then fight it back over here. Again, it won't social aggro if it runs next to this guy. But if you're trying to fight Aura's Coldheart, like right here, you will pull the gas bag when it patrols right up next to you, and then it sees you, right? So you want to fight it all the way back over here, at least. Anyways, those are my first impressions of what's going on with the new Affix. I hope this video helped. Of course, a lot of stuff is yet to be fully tested, and I'm sure there will be a lot of updates over the next couple weeks, but I wanted to get this video out there to try and help anybody who has yet to step foot in these dungeons, arm you with some information. Let me know in the comments any discoveries you've made or changes you would make to any of the stuff I've talked about. Definitely, I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that will be updated as this series continues over the next few weeks as we learn more. So far, my impressions of the new Affix, I'm kind of underwhelmed by the anima powers. A lot of them feel pretty unimpactful. I wish that they would just buff them and then, I don't know, buff the dungeons as well, like make the dungeons harder and then give us stronger anima powers, but I don't know. I could end up changing my mind on that, I guess, but that's my take on it right now. So far, I'm enjoying not having Pridefuls just murder me on 5 times per dungeon, so that's been nice. Yeah, let me know what you think. Check out my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Ratnos. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.